Okay, this is going to be a short video to just highlight this week's activities. If you go into Blackboard, you'll see that there is a document for the first unit of VBA. Last week, of course, we did some Excel work, but we weren't using Visual Basic for applications. We weren't getting into the code. In addition to the link where you're going to upload your homework, there's a quiz, 10 question, 20-point quiz that you'll take this week. It's a good idea to take the quiz after you do the homework and the reading. You should be able to do well on the quiz after doing the homework and the reading. And then there's some supplemental materials that, especially those of you that are really interested in this and liking it and finding it interesting and want to dig deeper, these are available to you. First is a PDF, free PDF of a book called Excel VBA Programming for Dummies. This is actually a very good book. There's newer editions out there. And if you flip through this ebook and you like it, I would encourage you to even consider going off and purchasing the fourth edition. Not much has changed, quite frankly, between the third and the fourth edition, but just to give the author some credit. And we're not going to be doing a lot with this book, but it does go into much more detail than I'm giving you in the documents, the PDFs that I'm creating for you weekly. And the reason I'm creating documents for you weekly is I want to just focus on the things that I really want you to know that are critical and crucial. But for those of you who want to go above and beyond, there are some good resources here. And on page 5 of this document is the book dedication. So the author is John Walkenbach, but he makes his dedication, and his dedication is a VBA program. So part of your homework this week, in fact, I think the last part of your homework this week, is to type that into VBA. Now, what does that mean, typing that into VBA? Well, let's talk about this. So in my document that I've given you, we kind of step through this, but sometimes it's easier to see it than it is to read it. So if we pull up Excel like we normally would do, we've got our Excel file, everything we did in the first week, formulas and functions and data and labels. But there's a developer tab that may or may not be visible on your machine. If it's not visible on your machine, I give you the instructions in the PDF where to get that. You go under File, Options, and in the Options, the Quick Access Toolbar, the Customize ribbon, there's a button here to make the developer visible and invisible. So if I turn it off, you'll see there's no developer there. Why did it show up still? Turn it off, say OK. It's actually not letting me turn the developer ribbon off. But if it wasn't visible, you would make it visible by going under Options, Customize, and make it visible. Okay. It's such a good tab, Excel doesn't want to get rid of it, I guess is what's going on there. When the developer tab is available, you can get into the Visual Basic Editor by clicking in the left part of this ribbon. Leftmost part is the Visual Basic button, and the hint there shows you that Alt F11 is the keyboard shortcut that will take you there. So either one of these takes you to this separate window. Now this is like nested inside of the Excel file. So if I close the Excel file, this window would go away. This is where the code, the VBA code within this file exists. If I click this button in the editor, if I click the Excel icon, it takes me back here. And in this window, I can press the Alt F11 or press the Visual Basic button and take me back to the editor window. So these two are really two sides of the same coin, heads and tails of the same coin. We're still talking about one Excel file, just getting into the code inside this file. And in this file, there's a VBA project window. There's a properties window, which we're going to talk about a little bit in the future. Not today, not this week. And then this big gray area, this is where we're going to do our editing. To pull up an editor window, go back to the properties window and right click and say insert a module. The code that we're going to be writing, and it adds a module into the project area here. And for this module, we're writing code, and it says module 1 here, and the title bar says module 1 there. In these windows, we have our minimize, maximize, and exit, and then a small version, minimize, maximize, exit, that are specific to this inside window. So if I maximize inside this larger frame, it fills the gray area. See, there's the X for the editing window, and there's the X for the entire editor. So if you haven't seen that before, it's kind of nested in here. And in this window, we can write code. So if I pull up, go back to, so this is kind of the things in this page. Sorry to flip through this. I know this is not exciting to look at. So the first thing I have you write is a little program called Hello World. This is kind of the normal first time writing code in any language. Most books begin with a Hello World program. It's kind of the gentle introduction. How do I do the same thing in C, in Java, in Visual Basic, in Pascal, in Perl, in whatever language we're working with? Now I typed the word sub and Hello World and pressed enter. The editor added these parentheses for me. It also added an end sub for me, and it made the words sub and end sub highlighted in blue font. The blue font tells us that those are special words called keywords. Those are the words that tell Excel what this code is supposed to do. Hello World is the name of my function, and function name or procedure, and procedure names or subroutine and procedures, I'm going to use those interchangeably, but sub is short for subroutine, so I'll call it subroutine more often than not. The name of your subroutine is anything you want, but it has to begin with a letter, can contain letters, digits 0 through 9, and the underscore symbol only. You can't have spaces, you can't have exclamation points, you can't have question marks. And spaces in particular where we sometimes forget. So if I try to say hello world like that, I get this highlighting in red and it's giving me an argument. Now, when you put a space in it, you might actually have a pop-up window that comes into play. The reason I didn't get that pop-up window is I went under my tools option and changed the tools menu and selected the options drop down. And in here, there is the auto syntax check. So with that auto syntax check, I get an error message. And I don't like getting that error message. So I'm going to turn off the auto syntax check. I still get the feedback with the red font that tells me something's wrong, but things are good. And inside this sub in sub are a list of 1, 10, or 100, or 1,000, or however many instructions I want that Visual Basic is going to execute when this code gets called on. Message box is the command I'm going to use. And when I type this, the VBA editor gives us this context help that tells us a little bit about what it's expecting. So it's expecting in this yellow prompt, message box, a left parenthesis, right? And then it's expecting a prompt. This is what the user is going to see. So inside string literals, type a message. Now, in our prompt, it had other things, right? So if I do commas to separate items in the list, it tells us that we have the option of putting a button in here, and then comma, a title for the message box, and comma, a help file, and comma, a help context. Those are all in square brackets. That means they're all optional, and we're not going to use any of them in this case. So when I run this code, it's going to display Hello World. Now to run it, I go under the menu run option, and the first option is to run. It takes me back into Excel and says Hello World. Great. Or I could hit this shortcut, the same green arrow pointing to the right, which is a run, does the same thing. Or I can do the keyboard shortcut, which is an F5. And by pressing F5, it gives me Hello World. Now something interesting happens. If I move the cursor, I was between sub and in sub. If I move the cursor outside of the sub and press run, Excel doesn't know for sure which subroutine I want to run. Even though there's only one subroutine in the entire module, it still doesn't like to make assumptions. Programming the computer, you will realize that the computer is dumb, not smart. It's amazingly powerful and fast, but it follows instructions step by step, and it does exactly what you say, not what you mean. So when I say run, it's if the cursor was inside a sub in sub, it knows that's the subroutine you wanted to run. Because it wasn't, it's going to ask me which one do I want to run, and I can pick from the list. Okay. But if you put the cursor between a sub and an in sub, it does it automatically. Outside, you get a dialog box to confirm. Now, just doing all this right here, I'm going through this video kind of quickly because it's in the reading and you can get the reading. Um, but it's an interesting and neat thing that we get to give instructions to our program, and in this case, our Excel file. Let's go back to our chapter reading here. Oops, not the PDF there. Let's go back to our the document that I created for you. And I have another example that I want us to do. If you just type in this code, and this is a good thing that I do want you to do, is type in this code, because you're going to turn this code in, this file that we're working on right now. I'm going to have that as one of the 2 homework files you're going to upload for me. So try typing in another command here, sub try these commands. So I'll go back to Excel and I'll say sub try these commands, and it gives me the parentheses and the end sub automatically. If I had a typo here, if I had commands with 3 M's instead of 2 M's, it would be okay. Right? The file name is for you, the developer, to kind of give yourself a hint and a direction as to what you're doing, or some other human reading your code later to have an idea of what you're doing. The code itself is not, Excel doesn't do anything based on the name you give it there. It's just a descriptive label. And looking at our code here, the first thing we see is the use of a single quote for a comment. When you have that single quote, everything else to the right of that quote is a comment, and it's ignored. The entire rest of the line until you hit carriage return is ignored. It also highlights it in green so that we get the visual feedback. And what we're doing in this example is we're doing 2 ways of referencing a cell. So on my spreadsheet, I can reference a cell by saying range and then inside parentheses A3. What's it? Go WKU, go WKU. Okay. And that line, let me just run the program with just this line. The comments aren't going to do anything, but that third line is going to have the effect of entering go WKU in cell A3. I'm not sure why my cells are using numbers instead of letters right now. That's some setting I have set, and I don't know what it is. I'll change it later. Yours should say ABC instead of 1, 2, 3, and I've got some setting there. What am I doing? But I'm not worried about that. I know that that's column A. And you can reference any cell or even any range of cells using the range command, and then inside quotes, the cell or the range of cells, we have first cell colon second cell. And you can put text into it. You can, as we see here, change some of the properties of that cell, like the interior color. Now, as you start typing it, this what's called code complete shows up, and Excel allows you to, the VBA editor lets you know things that it knows. And VB yellow is a predefined constant for the color yellow. I could generate that color using red, green, blue combinations in an RGB function, but there's a handful of predefined colors and I'm using those. And now when I run this program, and just so I can see it better, I'm going to make this a little smaller, and we'll pull up the spreadsheet on this side. These guys kind of go hand in hand together. And so now when I run this, not only does it put WKU in there, it puts interior color. If I said go WKU win, right, then it would say go WKU win. The text goes beyond it. The font, the fill color doesn't, right? Now, there's another way to put text into a cell. The other way, going back to my Word document here, is to use the cells command where you say 2 integers down and over. So this is down 7 over 2, which is the equivalent of B, column B7. Down 7 over 2, that's a way of saying B7. down 7 over 2 is equal to go big red. And when I run that, down 7 over 2 gets the value go big red. Okay. Now the cells will be useful in the future. One thing that it doesn't do for us is I can't say dot interior, right? It doesn't do code complete for the cells function. If you want to get that, or dot font, any of those things, it's not popping up. But if I say range B2 dot interior or font or border, those things do pop up. So the range does code complete. The cells doesn't. But there's a reason we'll like the cells, and we'll see it later. We have the choice of using whichever one's more convenient for what we're trying to do. And in this case, what we're doing is we're going to set the font size to 40 and the font color to VB red. Font size to 40 and font color to VB red. And when we run that, whoops, what happened there? Not what I expected. I said B2, I should have said B7. There we go, sorry. So B7. So I made this cell has font 40, that's why the column width got as high as it did, but there was no text in there. So if I put text in there, yep, sure enough, it's changed B2. And only B2 to have that large font in red color. But since hopefully that kind of makes sense. And Excel will do, VBA code will do what you tell it to do, not what you mean it to do. So that's part of what's interesting and also perhaps frustrating about coding. So there's some more, type that code in, including the ability to change the width of the sheets and to change the active sheet name. So I can say, for example, just to do this one, sheet 1 dot standard width is equal to 25, and active sheet name is equal to what I call it. That's awesome. That is awesome. And what will happen is on my sheet here, here's my sheet name. I'm going to change that sheet name from sheet 1 to that is awesome. And the width of these columns, which right now have a column width of 8.43, or in this case, this one is 17.57. All of those are going to change when those two lines execute. Now all the column widths are 20.43. That's interesting. I said 25. Okay. Because those are manually resized, they didn't change, but the default ones, all the ones that had default size, are set to 25. And this is awesome is the sheet name. So it's kind of cool the things we can do there. The last little bit that I want to do on this pre-homework part is to type in that code where you do for my green equals 1 to 25, my blue equals 1 to 125, cells my green comma my blue dot interior dot color equals RGB 0 comma my green times 10 comma my blue times 10, next my blue, next my green. And when you run it, your program should look something like this. You might want to resize the columns 1 through 26 to make them more narrow so it all fits on your screen, but you'll see these different shades of blue. Okay. So I want you to do that and then save your work. Now, let's talk about saving your work because this is important. When you save your work by default, you just go under File, Save, and a window pops up that says, where do you want to save your work? And I'm going to save my work on the desktop or wherever you want to save it. Okay. But by default, it pulls up as XLSX. And the second option in our drop-down list is an Excel macro-enabled workbook. Well, what we're doing is writing macros. The subroutines, the code we're writing is macros. And if we want to choose this XLSM, M for macro option, if you submit it under the XLSX option, the default option, you're going to lose all your macro code. Remember these two windows. Let me close that up. I'm not going to save right this second. These two windows, this window and then our editing window, are two sides of the same coin. You have to use the XLSM to save everything you do in this window. This whole window goes away if you save it with the XLSX. So when I do my save, I'm going to save it on my desktop or wherever you save your stuff at. We'll save it as hello world. Actually, it says in the document what I want to save it as. bdan410 hello world. Looks like I may have done this before. And make sure you save it as the XLSM option. And by doing that, then all will be well. Okay. Okay. So now I can reopen that file and my VBA code is still there. Your homework is pretty simple. I want you to start a new file. You're going to submit this file, the hello world. You're going to submit that. That's part of your homework. Right? You're going to submit two files. The other thing you're going to do is create a new file that has three subroutines. The first subroutine is a say anything subroutine, and all it does is a message box like hello world, but instead of saying hello world, you're going to create an original message. You can say, you know, here's the examples. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that, which is a line from 2001: A Space Odyssey. These aren't the droids we're looking for, which is also a line from a movie, Star Wars movie. So is the third line. Holy cow, I didn't realize it. Those are all movie quotes. I'm a movie fan, so that's not surprising. And by the way, here we've got symbols. If you actually type in naughty words inside those quotes, it will repeat the naughty words exactly as you type them. Right? It's computers aren't smart, they're dumb. They do exactly what they're told, not what you mean for them to do. So you can confirm that by typing naughty words inside of quotes, and it'll repeat those. The second thing I want you to do is create a second subroutine and do the following three statements. Right? Use the range function to assign the text WKU to the range A5. Use the cells function to assign the text Big Red to cell C7. And use the range function to use a yellow font interior color on the range B14 to D20. Okay. So do those for me. I think I may have had a different range in there before, whichever one, but this one here will work for what we're doing. And then last thing I want you to do is I want you to create a third subroutine in that new file. Call it book dedication and type in that code that we saw on page 5 of the Excel for Dummies free PDF. And I've repeated that code for you right here in the Word document. And as I say in this note, computers are dumb, not smart. You must be precise as you type the code above. If you have a typo, it's not going to hurt your computer. You're not going to damage your laptop or your computer in any way, but your code won't work. So to get it to work, you've got to have every quote, and every double quote, and every left parenthesis, and every comma exactly as what we see in this window. Now later on, we'll understand this code more, but just for today, for this first time hands-on, I want to get you into Excel, I want to get you into the VBA editor. I want you writing some code and seeing how it works. Okay. When it works correctly, what it's going to do is it's going to prompt you what makes, and it's going to have the name of the person who Excel is registered to on your machine. My version of Excel is registered to Thad Cruz, so it says what makes Thad Cruz so special. And you'll type in anything you want to type in here, his knowledge of Marvel movies, Marvel Studio movies, and then it will message box out, this book is dedicated to Thad Cruz because his knowledge of Marvel movies. Okay. So name this second file your name followed by VBA Homework 1, and be sure to use the XLSM extension. So it might be Amy Adams, VBA Homework 1, it might be Sam Rockwell, VBA Homework 1, right? It might be Donald Trump, VBA Homework 1, whatever it is. Put your name there followed by VBA Homework 1. Save that with XLSM so the macro code is included. and upload both of those files to Blackboard by using the click here upload link. Right. The last thing, so in addition to the PDF, there's also a lot of information out there on the web when it comes to learning VBA. If you really decide you like this and want to go above and beyond the hurdle that I'm putting out there for you every week, and you want to go more and dig deeper, you don't need, not only have you got a PDF book for this, but you don't even need that. If you just Google, right, anytime you just Google VBA and then a topic message box, right, there's a wealth of information that'll pull up. VBA back color, okay. Text back color properties. The MSDN site tends to be a little more detailed. Usually the first site that's not Microsoft is what I like to go to, and you can learn about the colors options. So there's lots and lots out there. I have one site that I think is written appropriate for novices, is the free VBA training course, and here's some links from that course that are relevant to what we did today. So there's one just for a basic introduction to VBA and setting up the ruler. There's one for setting up certain properties. It talks a little more about what we mean about the range properties and the content, some things that we didn't talk about. Font size, we did talk about. Clear contents, we didn't, but you can kind of guess what clear contents does. It clears the contents of the selected cell, right? And there's one for colors. So these are some of the standard colors that are already pre-built, and you can create your own colors using the red, green, blue, and you can create 16 million different combinations of 255 times 255 times 255 for all your color combinations. So if you want to play more than what this assignment is, those two things, the PDF and this website, that would be my recommendation for where to go next if you want to dig a little deeper. If you don't want to dig deeper, then just do the document that I gave you and just upload the homework, and we'll carry on next week when we start getting into writing some programs of our own instead of copying somebody else's.